Hi, friends. It's your girl Harpo. Welcome to this episode of Brown Girl Guild titled Friend Breakups. We talk and talk about romantic breakups all the time. There's so many movies out there, there's so many songs out there, and there's so much in pop culture about breakups and romantic breakups, particularly. But we don't talk nearly enough about friend breakups. And why not? Friend breakups also hurt, friend breakups also suck. Some of my life's greatest heartbreak has actually come from friend breakups, not romantic breakups. I mean, yes, I've had many romantic breakups as well, and a lot of heartbreak that has resulted from that. But a lot of my heartbreak and a lot of my pain and hurt has come from friendship breakups. Losing a friend is like losing a finger. Yes, we have 10 of them, we have multiple of them, but can you imagine having to live life without one of them? I mean, you might think, like, okay, I can live without a pinky and I'll be fine. But when you lose that pinky, it's really painful and you can really feel the loss of that pinky, even though you have nine other fingers. And how would you categorize your fingers? Like, how would you be able to hierarchically, categorize them? Like, is the thumb more important than the pinky? Is your middle finger more important than the thumb? There's just no way. All your fingers are important and you love all of them. Friendship is like that too. You might have a lot of them and you might have different, connections with them, and they might be serving different purposes in your life, but they all matter. And so when one of them walks out or leaves, or you have to cut them out and remove them, it still hurts equally. I've had a lot of friend breakups in my life, and I'm going to get into why I've had so many friend breakups in this episode here. But quite literally, that's normal. Like, losing friends and having friend breakups is normal. It's a part of life. And sometimes me, can start to internalize it and think, why can't I keep friends? Like, why am I constantly losing friends? The reality is that even though we're sold this beautiful package of sisterhood constantly, the reality is that sometimes sisterhood can get incredibly toxic, right? Yes, sisterhood is powerful. Yes, sisterhood is, a magical place to be and a beautiful divine experience if done and participated in correctly and appropriately. But sometimes sisterhood can be incredibly toxic, right? We're sold this belief that we must always support our sisters, we must be there for them through thick and thin, but sometimes the unconditional love of friendships can and does get toxic. Unconditional love can blur boundaries, it can allow for disrespect, and it can really excuse envious, jealous, bad competitive behavior amongst your friends as well. But because we're wearing this blindfold of sisterhood, we think that no, this is my sister, this is my best friend, this is like my closest comrade. Like, no, there's no way that, any of this can be happening, right? And sometimes we also think that in our closest relationships, we actually don't need boundaries. We don't need to have parameters around what's okay and what's not, because in close relationships, it's supposed to be a free for all. But in our closest relationships is where we actually need the most firm boundaries, because that's where we have the most overlap. That's who we're seeing the most. That's who we're communicating with the most. That's who we're showing up for the most. And if you don't have boundaries in those close relationships, shit's gonna hit the fan inevitably. It might not today, it might not later, but it will inevitably hit the freaking fan. We can also become friends with people based on compatibility and not our values. And we don't realize that until we're put into a situation where we realize, oh my God, that's not my value. I don't actually feel okay doing that, right? We might become friends with someone because, I don't know, we just vibe and people are always like, oh my God, yeah, it makes so much sense why you guys are friends. Sometimes we can just become friends with people because we're just so used to having them there. Like, it's just so easy. But when you're put into a situation that really calls on their values and your values to be looked at, that's when you might realize, I actually shouldn't be friends with this person, right? There's so many things that I participate in and I like to do that my friends do not like to do. And that doesn't mean we stop being friends, but it's just a point to be made that, like, these are things that we don't like to do, but fundamentally, our values are the same. Me and my closest girlfriends, our values are the same. We're very, very rooted in the same sort of belief system. But what happens when your values don't align with friends, right? What happens when your intentions aren't similar? And you might not necessarily want to build the same kind of world that your friends want to, or vice versa. You might run into a lot of problem there and realize maybe I should be friends with this person. Maybe like we're not meant to be friends. Maybe we're just supposed to be acquaintances who can love and support each other from afar, but because our values aren't the same, we can't really move and journey through this world together at the same pace. And sometimes we also stop being friends with people because we come up to a fork and we realize that we have to make a decision. And our friends might have also shown up at the same fork and also be called to make a decision. And sometimes we might choose to go right and our friends might choose to go left. And that also might be the reason why we break up. Right? It might be the reason that they're no longer in our lives. You might have chosen something that is really, really right for you, and your friends might have chosen something that's really, really right for them. Or perhaps they just came to a fork and while you made a decision and you decided you wanted to go left or right, they just chose to stay at the fork and hang out for a little bit longer. And vice versa. Your friends might have gone off in a different direction. And you might be like, I don't really know how to move forward right now. I feel really stuck and paralyzed. I'm just going to stay here. Those can all be reasons that you break up with your friends. And yes, there's room for betrayal. Yes, there's room for friends doing things and stabbing you behind the back and gossiping about you. But sometimes I feel like when those kinds of things happen and then those people don't stay my friend, I always look back and I think to myself, Harpa, you always knew. You always had this gut feeling. You had this instinct, this like thing your intuition was trying to tell you all along that this person isn't good for you. This person isn't right for you. You are trusting this person too quickly and too much and too deeply. And at that time, I couldn't make those decisions because again, like maybe we were really compatible. Maybe like at the surface things made sense and that's why we were friends. And I really admired this person. I liked this person. But liking somebody and having them actually be good for you are very different things. You can like someone and not necessarily bring them into your close circle. And so a lot of times friend breakups can happen because even though you were being told again and again that there's just something that doesn't click, there's something that doesn't align here, you still chose to include them in your friend circle when perhaps you shouldn't have. Now, the reason for my friend breakups, I've been able to identify now. I've had friend breakups all throughout my life since I was in high school. And currently, in this moment at 25, I'm also experiencing reconciliation with someone that I did have a friend breakup with, and then also a couple other friend breakups. And that is what is, I guess, the pain point in my life right now. I feel content overall, but the friend breakups that I'm currently experiencing at the moment are the ones that are really the places where I'm experiencing the most hurt. The reason for my friend breakups in the past have been my over-attachment, where again, it might not have felt right. It might not have felt like this person belongs in my circle, but I just became so attached and I didn't want to have to let go of somebody or have someone else let go of me. It was just really convenient. And so the attachment actually grew stronger and stronger because I didn't want to let go of this person and they didn't want to let go of me. Codependency was a reason that I also had a lot of friend breakups and still continue to have a lot of friend breakups where I make myself so available to my friends that, I make them so open and like I invite them into my life. I invite them into my home. I invite them into my relationships. They get to be friends with my friends and we get all this overlap. Or I invite them into like my work situations. And so what happens is that I allow these people to depend on me so much that I'm not sometimes I feel like I'm not doing it out of a place of actual um intention, right? I want them to be able to rely on me so much. I just want to be this really really good friend and they end up relying on me and depending on me so much that inevitably, as you can probably already tell, that's usually not a good course of action because often that is conditional. Even though my mind tells me it's unconditional, it's actually very conditional. Often I want them to be able to rely on me and depend on me and have all this, you know, beautiful alignment in their own life because I want them to be able to turn around and say, Harpo did that for me. And when they say, Harpo did that for me, it checks off a box on my list and makes me feel good about myself. Right? It tells me, "Oh, look, you did this for someone. You're enough. You're worthy." But this conditional giving masked by this unconditional giving is really toxic because what it does is when I don't get something in return, quote unquote, get something in return. When I'm not offered something in return, I get really resentful. I get really angry. I get really frustrated. And I say, well, look at what I did for you. I did X, Y, and Z for you, and you didn't do jack shit for me. And then the person sort of looks at me and thinks, wow, like I didn't actually think that you were doing those things and giving me all these things because you wanted something in return. Right. And so I have actively built non reciprocal friendships in my life where I'm constantly giving and giving, giving and saying and putting on this front that I don't need anything. Meanwhile, low key on the inside, I'm constantly expecting something. And so this has caused a history of rocky friendships in my life where I have wanted to say someone's name in every room that I've walked into, but I've done it to sort of collect a gold sticker and a badge of honor to put on myself to say to someone, look at all that I do for you. And this is why you should do something for me in return. But that is toxic, right? That is a very harmful behavior because what it does is it places that standard of self-worth for myself outside of me, and that bar just keeps getting raised higher and higher and higher, and that's not healthy, right? It also creates very unstable, ingenuine, inauthentic friendships as well. I also received a DM once that made me believe that I really needed to record this episode. I got a DM once, and the person was saying, hey, our boy, I listened to your episode that was on dating as a powerful, badass woman, where, you are attracting all these partners who are so infatuated by you. But then as soon as they get close to you, they realize you're too much and then they want to step away. And she asked me, do you think that's true also for friendships as well, where because you're this powerful person, you're this bold person, you have this beautiful network, and you're a powerful, outspoken, outgoing person, you attract a lot of friends, but very soon those friends are also leaving your life because they're realizing you're too much for them. I said, absolutely, sis. Of course. That does not only happen in romantic relationships, it absolutely happens in platonic friendships, in female friendships, especially as well. Where girls want to be friends with me, or girls want to be friends with this idea of Harpo, but then as soon as they get up close and personal, they realize, okay, this is actually a bit too much for me. And so I'm going to step away. And that happens for a lot of reasons. That doesn't happen because I'm too much. And it doesn't happen because these women are not enough, or that, there's something wrong in that mix there. There's a multitude of reasons why that happens, I believe. I think first and foremost, there is so much competition amongst women, right? That has been taught to us. It has been fed to us. It's been told to us as a means of it's been taught to us as a means of survival, right? It's a very misogynistic way of operating. It's competition between women is a tool of the patriarchy. We're told that there can only be one of us, right? There's only one room. There's only one spot on the roster, and you both need to fight it out. All of you need to fight it out, actually. Rarely is it just the two of us, but you all need to fight it out because there's only one spot on the roster for you. And I mean, we've seen it in our homes for years, right? Like, I don't know if I can look at my extended family and my close family and look to relationships between women that are rooted in like actual love and compassion and non-competition. We've grown up seeing it amongst like our moms and our grandmothers, our moms and our aunts, our moms and their in-laws, and so on and so forth. And I mean, all those drama that we watch, right? Like women, like there's something in Punjabi that people say all the time. It says, "Tini hi duji timi di dushman hundi hai," which basically translates to a woman is the enemy of another woman. So this is not inherent. This is not natural. It's been something that's been taught to us. And so we're constantly in competition with one another, right? Where have we really seen the women in our lives be friends with one another? The other thing is that most of us don't actually have models for healthy friendships in our lives because most of our parents don't have friends. Like, I don't know about you, but both my mom and my dad do not have friends. They have family members, they have each other, they have their children, they have their parents, but they don't really have like friends in their lives. My mom doesn't have anyone that she like hangs out with and, goes to the store with. And it wasn't until very, very recently that like my mom has like one friend that she'll go get a pedicure with. But even my dad doesn't have very many friends. And what I've been sort of taught my entire life is that family first, friends second, right? That family is where you experience unconditional love. And that's where you experience like trust and honesty and loyalty. And that friends are always going to come and go. And you're not going to necessarily ever find the foundation that you're looking for in your friends that you might be able to find in your family. And I just think that that's, first of all, not true. I mean, my friends are such a strong part of my legacy. My friends have been there for me through thick and thin. But because we don't really have very many healthy models of friendship growing up, it can be really hard to discern when friendships are healthy and when they're not. It can be really hard to discern when friendships are good for us and when they're not, because we don't really have very many healthy models of them growing up to begin with. And so big personalities can also make your friends insecure. Then, your success can also make your friends insecure, because all we really are mirrors for one another, right? Your friends are a mirror for you and you're a mirror for your friends. And if you're succeeding and you're doing great and your career is flying off and, you're feeling aligned and your routine is centered and you're grounded and you have meaningful work and meaningful relationships in your life, and your friend doesn't, that is going to frustrate them. That is going to bug them, right? And vice versa. You might also be in a place where you feel like, I'm constantly envious, I'm constantly jealous, I'm constantly competing with my friend. Why? That is my friend. I love them, but I can't stand them and I can't stand their success. At that moment, what I would say is that we have to take a step back and realize what systems are being played out. Like what's the framework that we're working within right now? And what about my friend or what about me is bringing up this harmful, inappropriate, really like, really like unkind behavior that's causing a rift and causing distance between me and my friend. Friend breakups can also happen when we sort of set a standard for ourselves in how we want to be treated. And we might feel like setting that standard. I mean, I said this a little while ago as well, that, we might think that we don't need boundaries in our closest relationships, but setting standards for ourselves, even in our friendships, is very, very important. And sometimes when you set a standard for yourself and the way that you want to be treated and perhaps the way you want to treat your friends, that can also cause a rift, right? Because all of a sudden you've introduced this line in the sand that wasn't there before. But it's completely okay to set a standard, even if it means losing friendships and dropping friends, and also perhaps removing yourself from situations that are not safe for you. Because why would you want to be treated like shit? Why would you want to be in friendships where you're not respected, you're not taken into consideration, your feelings are not, accounted for? And why would you want to be in friendships that are rooted in pain and hurt and constant putting down? It's completely okay for a set of for us to set a standard, but what that might also do in turn is cause for people to walk out of your life and for you to also walk out of people's lives if those standards are not being met. And actually, even though friend breakups suck and they were really hard, if you can look back and identify a place in that friendship or in that relationship, and perhaps even, pinpoint why exactly that friendship breakup actually even happened, and if it was rooted in a radical act of self love, you should be able to say to yourself, I'm proud of you. Yes, I lost that friend, and yes, they're not in my life anymore, but I'm also really grateful that I chose myself. And you can have a mini conversation with yourself. I do that all the time where I'll place my hands on my heart center and I'll say, Harpo, thank you. I'm so proud of you for putting us first. I know you really loved that person, and I know they meant a lot to you. And, you've been through a lot with them, but I'm so proud of you for choosing yourself, for putting yourself first. What a beautiful, radical act of self love. It is a radical act of self love to show up for yourself and to say no and to look at the face of someone that you truly, really love and have been through a lot with and say, this isn't serving me. This is not serving me anymore, or it always hasn't served me. And I'm going to let you go, because it's easier to love you from afar than it is to love you in this really harmful, negative environment. And the thing that we have to remember about friendships, right, is that friendships are temporary. Friendships are things that happen and then sometimes they don't. Friendships are things that we have and sometimes we don't, right? The temporality of friendships is something that we don't really focus on. It's not something that we are considerate about. Sometimes we can be friends with someone and sometimes we're not friends with them. That doesn't mean that they shouldn't have been a part of our journey, that maybe we shouldn't have been friends with them ever. We have to remember the temporality of our friendships, right? Some friendships might be on pause right now. Some friendships might be on a complete stop right now. And some friendships might be on a full go. You might be a green light in that relationship. But when we get attached to the phase of which that friendship is in, we're setting ourselves up for failure, right? Yes, there are some friends that come into our lives for a season. There's some friends that come into our lives for a reason. And then there's some friends that come into our lives for a lifetime. We can't get too caught up in which friendship is under which of those categories, right? I had a friend break up once with someone who I was friends with for many, many years. And then it just became way too much. Like I really had to let them go. I found my 2019 journal the other day and I was like reading through my diary. And in my diary, I was like really documenting the friend breakup and I was reading it back. And I thought to myself, wow, like I actually didn't even consider how much this friend breakup impacted me and how hurt I was by it. Because when I looked at where I was now, I'm in the process of reconciling that friend breakup. This person is back in my life again, and it's not the same that it was before, but I think it's better. Like even though we're not constantly in each other's orbit, we're not talking all the time and we're not seeing each other all the time, where we're at right now is way better than what it was before the friend breakup happened. And so when I read the journal entries and I read where I was then in that relationship versus where I am now, I was able to really embrace the temporality of all my other relationships and say to myself, you're really close with this person right now, but you might not be tomorrow. And you need to be okay with that. You need to set yourself up in a way where you're detached. And when I say detached, I don't, detachment is different from disconnected, right? Disconnected relationships are not where I want to be, but detached relationships is where I'm okay being. Because when we detach and we let go of that attachment and that link that binds us to this person, it allows for us to really enjoy the relationship for where it is and what it is, right? We get to be present with it. Here's a take on friend breakups that you might not have heard before. When friendships do leave our lives, yes, it's painful. Yes, it's hard. And yes, we might think that, oh my God, how am I going to bounce back? Like, how am I ever going to live without this person? For example, I have a friend who, I consider my soulmate, like really, really my soulmate. And we're just in a different place right now. A take that I'm going to share with you that you might not have heard before is that I'm not saying that people are expendable, right? I'm not saying that people just come and go, but I would love for us to think about relationships leaving our lives and creating space for new and different and more to come in, right? Relationships leaving our lives and then creating space for more light to pour in. Because as we grow, as we change, as we shift and morph, so does our need for what we need in our lives, right? So do our needs, like in general, like what we actually need and how we want to be supported, loved for, and cared for, all starts to change and shift and grow as well. And some people and some of our friends might have been exactly what we needed for a large portion of our lives or for that time and place, but perhaps that's not it anymore. Perhaps we need more. And because life is constant ebb and flow, when these people are also leaving our lives and, we're journeying, we're leaving their lives, we're creating space and we're creating room for different to come in, right? For experiences and for kinds of people and kinds of love and ways of being loved and cared for and cherished and you know all the above in different ways, in ways that we might not have had before. And so even though friend breakups do suck, they're hard, yes, they're hard, they're bad, but the gift in friend breakups, if we really start to think like, what is the gift in this person leaving my life? The gift perhaps could be that you have created space for something else to come in, right? And that might be an opportunity. It might be a different relationship, or it might just be a different state of mind, a different lesson, right? Something might just click for you while this person leaves. It can be really hard to see the gift when a relationship leaves, right? Like when a relationship ends. But there is always a gift. There's always something that comes, whether it comes right away or it comes in a certain amount of time. There's always something else that comes. Maybe, you're able to take the training wheels off and experience life on your own terms. And maybe you don't have to be so reliant and dependent on this person anymore. Or maybe just in general, like maybe just like you guys are done, like that time has been served and their purpose has been served. And now you can have an influx of new energy and new friends that might be able to really help cement this new version of yourself, right? Help write this chapter of your book that is the book that is your life. Friend breakups are lessons, right? Friendships are lessons, but friend breakups are also lessons as well. And sometimes we can have friends that are, soulmates, they're karmic links. They're meant to come into our life, teach us a lesson, and then walk out. And we have to be able to embrace that, right? Like we're able to sometimes see the lesson in a romantic partnership that didn't work out, right? Like we were dating somebody, didn't work out, and maybe in hindsight we're able to see and say, okay, like I realized that that wasn't the best for me. I know it was something that I really wanted at the time, but I don't actually feel like it was meant for me. Sometimes it can be easier to say that about things that are, like things like romantic relationships, but perhaps we aren't able to say that about friend breakups. We aren't able to say that about friendships. But I really want to implore all of us to be able to also think about our friends as people who come into our lives, are sometimes catalyst for change, help us in our journey, help us really put the puzzle pieces together and, make the connection between a lesson that we have been made to learn again and again, and then they teach us that, and then they walk out and they leave. And so many times when I've had a friend break up, I've been in this like really like gunky, resentful, angry, frustrated, like really gossipy place. And I struggle with that. Like, I feel like when I have a friend break up, the first 6 months, I'm just talking shit, like I'm just like, this person did this and da 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 da. Look at what she's doing here. Like, look at that. But then eventually comes a breakthrough where I'm like, you know what? I actually forgot through all of this that I actually really love them. I actually really care about them. Yes, things have gone sour, things have gone sideways, but the reason that they were in my life, whether it was for 6 months, a year, or for 10, is that because I truly, really loved them, or I still love them, or at one point I had care for them and compassion and kindness for them and understanding as well, right? Like when we've been friends with someone for a really long time and it's platonic, we've also been on the sidelines for their lives for so long or for very little, but we're able to see them and maybe be able to see why they are the way that they are. And so when I've gotten past that phase of like hating them and wanting to like, like delete them off of social media and remove all the pictures of them and me on my phone, there's a breakthrough that comes that tells me, Harpo, root yourself in the love that you once had for them. And sometimes that doesn't happen, right? Sometimes it doesn't happen in 6 months. Sometimes it doesn't happen at all. But we have to honor where we're at with our friend breakups in each phase as well, because each of those phases is also giving us something. It's also teaching us something, right? If you are feeling resentful, if you are feeling angry and frustrated, it might be connected to how much you gave to them without receiving in return. And maybe that's a chance for you to get clear on your boundaries and your relationship with give and take, right? There's so much to be learned in every phase and stage of that friend breakup. So I want to read out a caption of a post that I made on Instagram after I reconciled with a friend, who, I love dearly still to this day, but our relationship has changed and it's not the way that it used to be. And again, I'm okay with that. But I want to read you a caption for the post that I made on Instagram because that's where I was. I was in my feels. I had recently reconciled, but then I'd recently let go of a friend as well at the same time. And this is what the caption read. And I hope that when you hear this caption, you hear these words, you're able to sit with them and you're able to see how you can also apply this to your own life. So the caption reads, it was posted on July 20th, 2021. It reads, this past weekend, I reconnected with someone that I'd been in separation with for quite some time. We went from spending most of our waking moments together to not speaking for years, and it was one of the toughest relationships to let go of. I see now that both of us needed to be apart, to learn, grow, heal, and change so that we could stop hurting one another, but mostly ourselves. We needed to become the current versions of ourselves so that we could add value to each other's lives, not hurt and pain. If you're in separation with a loved one, ask yourself, does it feel like a goodbye or a see you soon? If it feels like a goodbye, send them love and thank them for their lessons. Their purpose has been served. If it's a see you soon, lean into the discomfort of the space and hold love for them, yourself, and the space. In both cases, remind yourself that this too shall pass.